On this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we bring in Jacob Winans to discuss the past week that was for the Cats. We are going to be discussing a trade looming around the Panthers. Who could it be that could be shipped off of the roster? And we are going to preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the 17-2-0 Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, November 23rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. So, Cats fans, we have a game tonight. So, the Florida Panthers will be welcoming in the Boston Bruins for their first visit to FLA Live Arena tonight in their in a game prior to Thanksgiving and right before they go on their Western Canadian trip. Of course, they're going to have one game before they go on that trip, and it's we'll discuss more in segment number 3 on like how we're feeling going into this game. But of course, it's a Winans Wednesday, which means Jacob Winans is here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Jacob, welcome back, and most importantly, usually we do these podcast late at night, but thank you for waking up early with me to record this Winans Wednesday edition of the show.
Absolutely. Bright and early today. I'm usually not up for another hour and a half, so this is new for me, but I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, so Jacob last night made his way down to South Florida, so he's back home for Thanksgiving, and of course, it was a little hard to do a recording last night, but thank you once again for jumping on. By the way, before we discuss the week that was for the Panthers, are you going to any games this week?
I'm gonna attempt to get to the game tonight against Boston, so I'm not going to be down here too long. I have to head back home or head back up to Orlando on Friday night, so I'm going to attempt to get to the game against Boston tonight.
Yeah, and speaking of, and it's ever since your last appearance on the show, we were discussing we were just coming off of the 40+ save win for Sergei Bobrovsky against the Washington Capitals, but ever since that game, the Panthers are on a 3-game losing streak, giving up 5+ goals to their opposition in each of those games. Let's get a little bit of a wellness check of where you think the Panthers are at in this moment in time.
Yeah, so this past week obviously was definitely not what anyone was hoping for. Personally, I going back over, like if you were to go back on my Twitter, just a couple weeks ago, I mentioned how the homestand was going to be pretty rough. Some really good teams in the building, and the Panthers still just hadn't really seemed to find their groove yet. It ended up turning out that way, and then what was really unexpected was that loss in Columbus, where they just looked flat, disengaged, uninterested. And then the goaltending in that game was just probably the worst performance we've seen all season. It's not a good spot they're in right now. Now, obviously, it's still early enough where it's not time to hit the panic button, but we are talking about being at that 20-game benchmark now that Paul Maurice kind of assured everybody, it's going to take 20 games to get it down. We're right there now. So if there's no improvement, no grasping of the system at this point, and we hit that 20-game benchmark with only 9 wins under our belt, then we've got some real issues. And there's just not a ton of time to fix those things because this is an Atlantic Division that's loaded. It's an Eastern Conference that's loaded, and for the most part, it's kind of been a down start to the year. So the Panthers are very fortunate to be still right in the middle of this race. But as Panthers fans, we know how crucial it is to start seasons well. We've seen good teams. Panthers have had good teams in the last 5 to 7 years that completely missed the playoffs and were out of the race just because of a slow start. Even when they've been among the best teams in the NHL, the second half of the season or even the final 50 plus games of the season, they were just so far behind to start the year. There was no catching up. So
Yeah, and it's funny
we've
because
seen that happen.
yeah, it's funny because the Panthers are facing Boston tonight, and then I remember just a few years ago, I'm not sure if it was 2018 or 2019 where their final game was against Boston, but that didn't mean anything because that was a rescheduled game from a snowstorm a few months prior to that, and all the Panthers needed, I believe, was the Philadelphia Flyers to defeat the Rangers to beat the Flyers, and that didn't happen. So yeah. You don't want to be playing a game of catch up in the NHL, especially how when you look at games in hand. I mean, the Panthers don't really have games in hand right now, except really on the Maple Leafs. But you don't want to be playing that game of games in hand and just hanging on to hope. And of course, we've spoken about teams expected to improve and expected to take a step back. I mean, Detroit's a much improved team this year. And Toronto, of course, second in the Atlantic, despite all their injuries to the blue line. Morgan Riley just went on LTIR. They're missing Jake Muzzin as well. And they're still 25 points in 20 games. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, they're always going to be there. And it's just there's got to be a little bit of a sense of urgency for this Panthers team to just. It doesn't need to be like a 5 or 6 game winning streak by any sorts to really catch up. Of course, does that help? Sure. But it's just really about not going on these extended losing streaks. I mean, I spoke about yesterday that this is likely not going to be the 3-game losing streak is probably not going to be the longest that the Panthers will have. It'll probably be longer at some point in the season. Who knows? It could be tonight. I hope not. But it's just really about just staying afloat, and the coach trusting their players and vice versa. And it's just when you see goal differential at 0, when we've seen how different it was the past few years, it's just a different territory, no pun intended.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We're not a team that's going to run teams out of the building anymore. We're not a team that can string together comeback wins. If I'm not mistaken, we're something like 0-8, 0-9 when starting the third period trailing. The comebacks aren't coming the way they had been, and now we're in a position where you can't count on like a super long win streak, but you got to string together 2 wins, 3 wins, maybe even 4 wins here and there between each loss. That's how you climb back in the standings steadily, and just getting better at taking a point out of a loss. If it's a game that they're behind or a game that it looks like they're going to lose, you got to find a way to get those games to OT. Take a loser point here and there. We're not doing that as well as we could be. A lot of 1-goal, 2-goal losses where they don't get it past regulation. So it's little things like that where you can climb the standings. But yeah, stringing together 2 wins or 3 wins between losses, that's really what we're looking for. It doesn't have to be a set the world on fire heater, as Jack Hughes would say. We don't have to go on a 13-game heater like the Devils. We can string together a few quality wins between each loss, and we'll be just fine.
Mm-hmm. And the exact record for the Panthers when trailing after 2 is 0-6-1 on the season, and when they lead after 2, 7-0-1. So big difference when you get off to a fast start versus playing from behind, and multiple times really in just these last 3 games the Panthers have just falling behind and just playing that game of catch up, and that's not a place that they want to be. But in the next segment, we are going to give an update on Anthony Duclair's injury and where when he's expected to come back and what's got to happen for him to be activated for the Florida Panthers. But right now, we're going to tell you all about Athletic Greens. And our next partner is a product that I literally use every day because sometimes I need a little bit of a break from the coffee, even though you see me drinking coffee right now on this show. But sometimes I need to get away from that and take some Athletic Greens. But what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. With just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Back on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show. So, Jacob, back a few months ago, a month ago, really, on the home opener, I was in person speaking with Paul Maurice, Bill Zito, discussing the update on Anthony Duclair. And, of course, as far as when the games are going on, he's not really seen on camera for like the Bally Sports broadcast and all that stuff. But I did see him on opening night walking with his sticks with him outside the locker room in his suit. So he's consistently around the team. Jameson Olive and Doug Plagans on the latest episode of Territory Talk also confirmed that he's consistently around the team. He's always in meetings and all. But here's one thing that we did not know as far as whether he's skating or not until just yesterday when Frank Saravelli posted on Daily Faceoff about Anthony Duclair. He started skating individually away when the cameras are off. So, but also when I saw him last month, I did not see a noticeable limp from Anthony Duclair. So just looking at him and observing, I'm like, okay, he looks like he has a little pep in his step. So thumbs up, good news for Duke. And starting some individual skating. Who knows when he's going to be practicing? Paul Maurice said maybe something around like late December, early January for the Cats. But he started skating. But of course, a trade has got to happen in order to fit Anthony Duclair in. And Frank Saravelli on Daily Faceoff spoke about either trading Anthony Duclair to create that space for the Cats, or shipping out a player like Sam Reinhart or Sam Bennett. But nowhere in that article is a mention of Patrick Hornquist as far as a trade to create space to bring Anthony Duclair back to the roster. I'm going to give you the floor. What are your thoughts when you saw that Frank Saravelli article from Daily Faceoff?
Well, for starters, the idea of just getting rid of Duclair and rolling with this roster, I think you're pretty much dooming yourself to a mediocre season if you just give away Duclair for nothing just to get cap compliant. I think any trade that has to be made should be made with the goal of bringing Duclair back onto the roster, not just to get under the cap permanently and for this season and move on from Duclair, who has 2 more years on his deal at a very reasonable and honestly a steal of a cap hit for a 30-goal scorer. You just don't give away those type of players. So I would hope that Bill Zito has a plan in place to get this done before it's time for Duclair to come off LTIR and we're stuck giving away one of our best top 6 wingers for literally nothing. With that said, I don't know. I find it hard to believe we're going to move Sam Reinhart, especially mid-season. He carries a relatively large cap hit to just be traded as a mid-season piece. I know he got off to a slow start this year. I know the numbers haven't been there, but he's still a guy I don't think you can part with offensively, given that the Panthers are pretty limited offensively this year as far as forwards go. Sam Bennett, I could see him moved potentially, just because the emergence of Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen were really solid at center with or without Sam Bennett, but the way he's playing, he's been crucial to the Caps' success this year. I'd be pretty disappointed to see him shipped out. For me, I think a lot of these guys, the guys you were talking about here, Reinhart, Bennett, Duclair, they're young players on very reasonable cap hits for the next multiple years. I don't really understand why it's those guys that are being mentioned as the trade pieces, given that our cap crunch is a 1-year issue. I don't see I don't really see the benefit in trading away one of those guys who's locked in with term when we have cap space going forward beyond this year. The obvious answer to me is Patrick Hornquist. Now, that's not a knock on him as a player. I love what he brings to the team, but he's clearly declined. He's on the fourth line. He has not really produced this year, and he seems like the most obvious answer to be traded. Now, for a team to bail us out of this cap crunch that we're in, it's going to have to be Patrick Hornquist plus something, whether that's a draft pick, a prospect, but whoever takes Patrick Hornquist off our hands is going to want something in return for doing it. But then there's also the idea, the notion that Hornquist could be stashed on LTIR with an injury of some sort. I mean, I don't necessarily love the Tampa Bay way of doing things, where you stash a guy on LTIR just because.
Brent Seabrook.
Exactly. But, I could see it happening. The style of play Hornquist plays, his age, this, in all likelihood, I don't want to speculate on his future, but I wouldn't be shocked if this is his last year in the NHL. I could see him stashed on LTIR until the end of the season, given that he's always playing through some sort of injury. This is a guy who's never healthy. And that's not a knock on him or his durability. If anything, it's a testament to his durability, the fact that he suits up every night, taking the kind of punishment he's taken over his career. So the obvious answer to me is something has to or will be done with Hornquist in particular, whether that's a trade or a long stint on injured reserve. But just giving away Bennett, Reinhart, Duclair, one of those guys for pennies, I don't know. I don't see it.
And Sam Bennett has 7 points in his last 5 games. Sam Reinhart was just coming off a 3-game goal streak right before the Columbus game as well. So I have done some math with trading Sam Bennett off the roster. You can bring at least 2 players up if you're able to, and you'll have cap space next year and beyond, $16 million to be exact. But if you're going to trade Anthony Duclair, you might as well not trade him at all, because you could, if he can't be activated, he could still just skate individually. He just can't play. So I just don't think that there would be a point in trading him. And I don't know if teams would be willing to pull the trigger based on him not being in game action yet. So I think the less likely scenario is Anthony Duclair actually being the one getting traded for the Panthers. Like I said, Sam Bennett's the number around Sam Bennett would create 1.6 in cap space. So that's enough to bring a player of like who has a cap hit of like 75K and a player somewhere around 800K. So if you bring one player that's like 900K, that makes it difficult to bring another player in. So that means probably Grigory Denisenko won't be brought up to the roster. Who Grigory Denisenko, once again, he got a game-winning goal and a game-tying goal, and then a shootout winning goal against the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins the other day. But it's just, of course, this was a difficult situation for the Panthers to be in, and even trading half of his salary and retaining half won't put the Panthers cap compliant for when Anthony Duclair does come back. So you got to do something around 75% plus for the Panthers in order to bring Duclair back if you're going to trade Patrick Hornquist. And the other thing is, just the other day, I believe it was Saturday's game versus the Calgary Flames, or no, it was Saturday's game. They mic'd up Patrick Hornquist and it's so great, and it's so great watching him on the bench. His passion, he's always talkative, and the players love him, and they're not going to put him on waivers. They're just not going to. You got to put a little bit of respect on players when it comes to when it comes to what they mean to the team, and I think that will create some tension in the locker room if you do end up doing that for Patrick Hornquist. But it's just the cap is really difficult to see. But also the minimum of 20 players is even harder to watch for this team.
Yeah, I agree. They're no pun intended, but they're skating on thin ice on a nightly basis because any injury they have, they're playing a game short of man. And there's a lot of teams in a similar situation with the cap, but this is just not sustainable. It's a situation where you can't have a successful season like this, especially when the bottom of your lineup consists of a lot of veteran guys, older guys that are required to play every game simply because of the numbers. A guy like Eric Stahl, a guy like Mark Stahl, a guy like Patrick Hornquist. These are guys who are up there in years who've played a ton of hockey. So they're guys who normally at this stage in their career are not being asked to play every night. There's healthy scratches in there. There's rest days for these guys, and you're just not getting that right now. And it is definitely to the detriment of the on ice result. And you literally can't afford any injuries at this point, unless it's something long term. So it's a really difficult situation to be in, and it's really not something that can be sustained over the course of an entire season.
Yeah, for sure. So Panther fans, just as far as Duclair's status for this team, still a little bit away from him returning. Don't expect them to return at least for another month at minimum. So we could see him late December. We could see him early January. We could also see him a little bit later based on if the Panthers are able to move someone. But once again, I think the less likely scenario is Anthony Duclair getting traded because GMs, I don't know if they want to trade for someone if they haven't seen them in game action yet. But in the third and final segment, we are going to preview tonight's game between the Boston Bruins and the Florida Panthers, as the 17-2-0 Boston Bruins will be making their way to FLA Live Arena tonight.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here once again. And Jacob, with of course, we spoke about the losing streak for the Panthers. And of course, we've spoken many times during the offseason about our expectations of the Boston Bruins. And of course, I think even Boston Bruin fans themselves have are surprised by this start by them, 17-2-0. Like we spoke about, Charlie McAvoy and Brad Marchand are both averaging a point per game since they've returned to the lineup. Hampus Lindholm has held the fort as the number one defenseman, the third leading scorer on the team. Patrice Bergeron's face-off numbers are still over 60%, even though he signed a one-year deal. Multiple time Selke Trophy winner. Just got his 1,000th point the other day as well for his career. David Pastrnak, I think he's probably on his next contract. He's probably going to be like an $11 million a year player for the Boston Bruins. So he's due for a big deal for him. But for the Panthers, this is in games of like the 20s. I don't know if there's many must win games. I'm not going to call this a must win, but I feel like this needs to be a sense of urgency type of game. And it's been a little while since I felt this nervous about a regular season game for the Panthers. But tonight, especially seeing how they blew the Tampa Bay Lightning out of the building on the road, I'm a little nervous about this one tonight.
I agree. I don't necessarily have the highest expectations for this one. Not necessarily because the Panthers are a bad team or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But Boston looks like an absolute juggernaut this year. They look very much like what the Panthers looked like this time last year. They're just running through teams. It doesn't look like anyone can stop them. And I think tonight's a statement game for the Panthers, whichever way it goes. One, there's a couple factors going into this. One is that we're right at that Thanksgiving break, where a lot of teams, where you are in Thanksgiving is kind of the measurement for how your season's going to go. The Panthers really could use a win at that threshold right now, and I think I think they do think about that to an extent. Everyone knows it. This is not just it's not a thing that just fans know. Players know that it's important to know where you are when you get to Thanksgiving, because you're usually about a quarter of the way through the year at that time. Again, the Panthers are in a position where they've got to get going. This is a division game, so it's a big game. Really counts as a kind of a 4-point game. Even though I don't see us catching Boston this year in the standings, but you never really know what can happen. And it's a 4-point game. You have to win your division games, and the Panthers need to get off to a good start where that's concerned, which they haven't really done so far, with a loss to Boston and a loss to Tampa already. Losing to the higher end teams in the division is not a great way to get going. So it's a statement game from that perspective, and then just the boost that can come along with beating the best team in the East. A team that's 17-2 is just completely run through everybody. Dominated Tampa in their own building the other night. If the Panthers can get this win, I think it's the type of win that can help turn this season around. It's a big confidence booster. It's the affirmation that they can play with the best teams in the league. Snaps the losing skid, sends you into the Thanksgiving break in a good position, and you get a couple days off. You have that nice win under your belt that you can go into those few days off with that in the back of your mind, and you come back ready to go right after that for a road trip and playing some good teams on the road and coming back for a little bit more of a slightly easier schedule at home after that. So it's a big night. Now, as far as regular season games go, this is definitely one that's a little bit more sense of urgency, a little bit more heightened intensity, and I think the Panthers are definitely feeling that because they've got to maintain that home ice advantage that they've had over the past couple of years. They've dropped the ball a few times recently. Not saying we should expect to win, but it's a game that they have to make sure they're competitive in and give themselves a chance when it gets down to the end. So I'm looking for a good game tonight, and just the one thing you can't have is getting a run out of your building and go into that Thanksgiving break on a 4-game skid with just giving up an avalanche of goals lately. I think they have to right the ship, and this is a good chance to do it.
Yeah, and especially with another team that's going to come into the building on Saturday, the St. Louis Blues, who were off to a pretty horrid start, and then now they've been on a little bit of a streak themselves in the last week. So they have two teams who are coming in hot, and then right prior to that is also the and also after that, is their Western Canadian trip. And of course, those waking up in a different time zone and playing a game is never easy, especially when you're facing McDavid, a Calgary team that you just recently saw in your own building. Of course, we're going to be talking about Matthew Tkachuk's return to Calgary in a later on in the week, as there's still 3 more games to play. But also another player I want to talk about for the Boston Bruins is Linus Ullmark. Even in the last 2 years with the Buffalo Sabres, I mean, in 2020, despite being some of the worst team in the NHL, I mean, he sported a 2.6 GAA and even had a winning record, even though I don't really subscribe to goalie wins. But Linus Ullmark has a lot to do with it. And for a while they've seen Jeremy Swayman as their future of in between the pipes, and they're getting this from the play of the guy who was seen as kind of a placeholder for a little bit right before Jeremy Swayman was going to take the between the pipes. Of course, Jeremy Swayman is back with the Boston Bruins. He just got activated, but also that's just another thing that's going well for Boston is right now Linus Allmark's numbers as far as GAA is just under 2.
Yeah, he's definitely been among the best goalies in the NHL this year. And even before he really broke out as one of the top goalies in the league, he's always been kind of a problem goalie for the Panthers. Even back when he was with Buffalo, we've seen him have some really good games against Florida. We've seen him win a couple of shootouts. If I'm not mistaken, he might be the best shootout goalie in the NHL, currently active by save percentage in shootouts, which is kind of an interesting stat. Not something that many people think about is your career record in shootouts and your save percentage in shootouts, but it shows that he's really solid. He doesn't make the first move often, and you have to get traffic to beat him, because if it's one-on-one, he's still got an 80 something percent chance of stopping you one-on-one. So he's a really good goalie. He's definitely one of the most underrated players in the NHL, and that's one thing about Boston. They always get good goaltending. It doesn't matter who it is. It's almost like in the NFL, when you're able to transition from quarterback to quarterback over the course of guys' careers and always have a good one, you're always going to be competitive, and that's Boston with their goaltending. They've never really had a stretch where they got really poor goaltending or didn't have the option in net. You go from Tim Thomas to Tuukka Rask, and then from Tuukka Rask you go to Ullmark and Swayman, and it's just they just have an endless supply of a revolving door of really good quality goaltending, and that's what's kept them competitive. It's kept their window open for literal decades now, and it's not going to be a game where the Panthers are going to have a ton of chances and they're not going to score a ton of goals. They're going to have to capitalize in special teams. That Boston power play is lethal. David Pastrnak is one of the best shooters in the NHL, and on the power play, he's an absolute sniper. And then you've got Bergeron, who, again, congratulations to Bergie for his 1,000th point. That is a huge milestone. And he's still playing his best hockey. Brad Marchand's out there. Charlie McAvoy's out there. There's a lot of weapons on that team, so you have to win the special teams battle. And our goaltending has to be up there competitive with theirs, and that's really going to be the key to this game. But yeah, Boston, they just always seem to find the answers. It didn't look like they would this year with all their injuries, and they just somehow find the answers every year. So it's going to be a battle tonight, definitely.
And of the 29 points that David Pastrnak has, 13 of them have been on the power play. Four power play goals, 9 power play assists. So definitely being the major difference maker for the Boston Bruins. And just listen to all these statistics for Boston. Power play percentage, 3rd. PK, 2nd. Faceoffs, 2nd. Goals for, 1st. Goals against, 1st. And shots against, 9th. So they're not only getting the saves, but they're not allowing pressure on Ullmark and Swayman as well around their net. So, and it also goes back to how it also tells us how crucial coaching is. I mean, even before Jim Montgomery got fired from the Dallas Stars, I was looking up his record. The Dallas Stars had 37 points in 30 games for right before he got fired, and that was a team that went to the Stanley Cup final that year before Rick Bowness took over for the Dallas Stars. So just goes to show what a difference in a voice can do. And of course, Jake DeBrusk rescinded his trade request as well. I know he got an extension right before that, but also goes to show what a difference a coach can make, and a confidence that a player can have. And Jake DeBrusk has definitely been a product of Jim Montgomery's system.
Yeah, for sure. Montgomery, sometimes coaches are judged based on their performance with one team or their lack of success in one city. But so much of what the NHL is about a coach and a team finding that fit. There's good coaches, really good coaches out there who don't have success because they're coaching a team that doesn't fit what they want to do, or they just don't mesh well with the players. And you got to remember, coaching player relationships, everyone is a person. It's not like it's just plug and play. You have to mesh as a person, and you have to mesh with the style of play that each of these guys has. You have to find a way to tailor it to that team. And for whatever reason, it just seems like Jim Montgomery and Boston have clicked just from the start. Boston was really raked over the coals for their handling of Coach Cassidy over the offseason. It seemed like they were almost just heading into voluntary rebuild, and from the outside looking in, that's kind of what it looked like. But now we're kind of seeing Montgomery was definitely the man for the job there. It seems like they found a great fit, Montgomery and this current Boston roster. Sometimes it just clicks, and right now it's clicking for them. And the Panthers are going to have to find a way to sort of rain on that parade tonight, because the Bruins, they've looked unstoppable, and Florida is a team that's really looking to gain their footing. They need a quality win. They have to get a confidence boosting win. And if you can come in and handle business against a Boston team that's well coached, that's very deep, that's clicking on all cylinders, has years of chemistry behind them, I think that goes a long way if you're able to come in and get a win on home ice against a team like that. Because Boston is, like you said, coaching has been there, goaltending's been there. They're ranking in the top 10 of every major category, top 5 in most. That's a juggernaut this year, and beating a juggernaut goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. And you said it best, confidence boosting win, not necessarily a must win for the Panthers, but definitely one that could change the tides as far as their season, that's for sure. But Jacob, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Hopefully by this time next week, there'll be 4 games for the Panthers by the time you come back next week. And hopefully we're talking about 180 from what the Panthers have had in this next week for the Cats. But thank you once again for joining me, and tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And you can follow me online at JacobWinans8. I'll definitely be active there tonight during the game. And just to all the listeners, the viewers, everybody, have a happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving. Definitely enjoy some family time, and hopefully we get a win tonight. Send everybody into their Thanksgiving on a positive note.
Hopefully a win tonight for the Panthers, and a Bills loss on Thanksgiving Day. That's for sure. And of course, you're a Cowboys player. That's for sure. So not necessarily rooting for the Cowboys, but not necessarily rooting against them neither. So good luck to your Cowboys as well. So thank you once again, Jacob, and I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to all the shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is a 20-minute or less podcast covering everything throughout the entirety of the sports scene. You'll get exclusive interviews and the take of the day. Locked On Sports Today on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.